introduce yourself, what you do, you kind of a little bit of your story. It's kind of introduction to the people who is Travis.
Sure, sure. So look, my name is Travis Partington. I did serve in the Marine Corps. I lived in different parts of the country before I came to Massachusetts. In the Marine Corps, I was a Hawk missile systems operator. So it's a missile about as long as your car and weighs about 1,500 pounds. And we were set up to defend, air bases, naval bases, strategic targets, and, firearm missiles at aircraft anywhere from 30, 60 miles away. I got out of the Marine Corps. I came to Massachusetts. I got a couple jobs, and then I got into technology, and that's what I do now. I'm a dad, and in my spare time, when I'm not doing podcasting or work or parenting or all the combined, I like to compete in weightlifting, ride my motorcycle, and shoot my bow.
Love that. I love that you said you're a dad, because at the end of the day, that is the most important. That's why being a dad is the reason why I do everything I do, because I want to be a dad. So I love that you said, like, out of your job, mentioned being a father, and motorcycles are cool, bow hunting's really cool. But let's keep it to the military. So I'm assuming right out of high school, joined the military.
No, I didn't. Got out of high school, kind of bounced around some jobs, and realized that I'm not going anywhere. I was parking cars for a car dealer in Louisiana, not going anywhere. And, it was kind of funny, I had a fork in the road. I had, worked at getting a scholarship for community college, doing singing and voice work there. And then I'm like, well, that's too easy. That's, sitting in a college classroom, that's hard. I'll join the Marine Corps. That could be easier, right? I mean, it's kind of funny. I gave up an air-conditioned classroom and scholarship ride to join the Marine Corps, but I wanted to completely reboot my life. I didn't think I was going to do it where I was. And so that really kind of, got me going on a different track in my life.
Interesting, because I think most people I talk to have ever joined the military. It's just, right out of high school. I didn't know what to do, and I needed some structure. So bam, Marines, Army, Navy, whatever. So is it more difficult? Like, the older you are, is it more difficult to kind of break that barrier into joining the military? Or it's kind of the same thing. You just sign up, you go through the training and the tests and the boot camp, and you're good to go.
All I can say is, I went to boot camp when I was like 21, 22 years old. And,
okay.
A 17, 18-year-old just has 3 years on you. They're right out of high school. They don't have any aches or pains. You can punish them all day and night. They just don't care. And they just adapt real easy. That they really grasped onto the military lifestyle. Whereas if you got a couple of years and some college courses underneath of you, you might be like, wait a minute, I'm not really buying everything I'm being told, but I got to do it anyway. So there is some differences in that. The good thing is a lot of us older, military service members and veterans kind of avoid a lot of the stupid mistakes our younger siblings, if you will, do. So, like showing up late or coming to work drunk, we kind of get around that and, are spared some of the problems because of that.
Well, it's different, right? Because you were 21, you had 3 years of real life experience under your belt, whereas a kid from high school, especially high school these days, it's just different from high school when it was, back in like the 80s or even, where it's just like a high school diploma doesn't mean as much. Kids are just a little bit raised differently. They got TikTok and social media, so they got different priorities. Whereas I feel like a 21-year-old now is like an 18-year-old back then. That makes sense. It's just mentally, and is how we develop. Like, I like to bash on college on this podcast sometimes, how much the cost is and the wasted classes. But, I learned more outside of the classroom in college. I learned more about being a man and being an individual and finding my identity in college through my friend group, through my fraternity, through this internships, way more than I did in the classroom. So that kind of gave me that structure. And I feel like military also gives something that gives that for people. It's even more so when you're 21 years old, bouncing off from job to job, as opposed to 18, bright-eyed out of college and doesn't know anything about anything.
100%. Absolutely. I mean, if you're, 18 to 21, 22, 25, and you've kind of shifted around in life a little bit and you want to belong to something bigger than yourself and feel like you have value and, be a part of something historic, the military, has that option for you, and they'll assess what you can do, and you can find all kinds of interesting jobs to do. And it's not just a job; it is the fraternity, a brotherhood. We call it esprit de corps, that really sticks with you the rest of your life. I still have people from boot camp that every now and then I'll look up, and people I served with 20 years later that we still say hello to each other. It's just amazing.
And people need that, right? I needed that. And I got that through fraternity. Obviously, it's way different than the military, but I can relate to the act of brotherhood and the idea of these people are your family. But, that could even, and you need that, especially on the battlefield. And I can't imagine what that's like, but, brothers in arms is a real thing. I've seen Band of Brothers. It looks as legit as ever. But that can even be a cause of some of the problems once they get out. Because it's just well, where's all the trauma come from? Well, they're family, right? And you lose family in the worst way possible. So it's almost like a double-edged sword, because you need that, but then again, what you need can also be the hardest thing to overcome once you're on the other side.
Absolutely. And you need them, while you're serving, but also when you're outside the military. It's when you get out and, someone you serve with, passes away or has a problem, or even a victory. Hey, I became a dad today, or, I got this really cool job after all this work, that you can celebrate with that person, or strive with that person in a way you can't with anybody else.
And I'm glad you started a podcast, because I'm just going to assume here, but once you start that podcast, I'm assuming a lot of your audience is military members, right? Or former veterans, Marines, what have you. It creates that community. It creates that bond. It's just it's a place where people can talk and explain and swap stories, bullshit, have a virtual beer, whatever. So it's very useful.
Absolutely, it was. So
yeah,
when Oscar Mike Radio came to being, right, there was a couple things going on. I was going through a very bad time in my life personally, nothing military related, but just extremely bad time in my life. And I felt really useless and cast away and had no purpose, and really nobody in my corner. And, you mentioned the Marine Corps League that I'm a member of. I'm a life member. And, we would go around and do these rituals for veterans that had passed. And some of them were, suicide. And you'd meet their family members, and you'd get asked, well, why has this happened? How did he or she lose hope? And I had to really think about that, because, there were some times where I'm like, hope is few and far between. It's a desert out here in the jungle, baby. I mean, it's just a brutal time. And I don't know why, I don't know what went on, but I'm like, I'm going to do something. I didn't know what it was. It took me some time to figure it out, but that's where the idea came from. I call it Oscar Mike Radio, because Oscar Mike is military speak for on the move or on mission. And I wanted to be on the move for my fellow veterans and people serving the military right away. And more importantly, people like yourself who support us. That's forgotten a lot of times. So it started there and is morphed into something really amazing.